Welcome back to Stepfamily Saturdays with your Stepfamily Guides. We are here to lead you through the everyday challenges of your stepfamily journey. With me today are my fellow Stepfamily Guides, Amelia and Amy. And today we're going to have an open discussion about the underappreciated stepmom. And boy, is there so much to cover with this one. We've, underappreciated by your partner, underappreciated by the stepkids, underappreciated by bio mom, underappreciated by society and the general context of how stepmoms are viewed out there. So where to start, ladies? What is on your minds? What's on your heart? What are the thoughts that you have?
The first thing that comes into my mind is almost like the guilt, I guess you could say, or the shame around feeling like you want someone to appreciate you in your role as a stepmom. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I think it's a little bit about what we talked about in last week's episode, where we were saying that, a portion of the time, whether it's 50% of the time or any other ratio of time, that you really are filling the mom role and doing all the things of a mom, but not always getting the recognition, not being celebrated on Mother's Day or not getting treated as such. And it's not that anybody's looking to fill or take over the place of bio mom, but just that general gratitude and appreciation that I think it was Amy brought up in that episode about, we're running the kids around, we're making sure there's groceries in the house, we're coordinating all the crazy schedules, but then we're just supposed to step aside when it comes to attending an awards ceremony or being a part of the parental unit that helped raise and guide this young individual into who they are. And so I think it just goes back to that, looking for that simple recognition, not necessarily looking to replace anybody.
I think a part of it too is also role assumptions. I've run into that with a lot of my clients. Like, well, she's the female, so I just assumed that she would start making the kids' lunches and handling the appointments. And there was an assumption made without actually having a conversation about it. So she felt like, well, I'm doing all of these things and I'm happy to do them, but he just assumed I wanted to do them. And maybe I didn't. So, we never really had a conversation about it. It was just assumed that I would step into all of those jobs, those roles at home, but we hadn't really talked about it. And then when I don't get a thank you, then it's like, well, nobody asked me. I'm jumping in to do this, and you could at least say thank you,
Right. No, I think that's such a good point, because I know something that I felt myself and that I see often is if you're a bio mom and a stepmom, and you're that bio mom first, and so you already have those natural instincts to be that mom role and to fill in. So when you're just adding more kids to the grouping, it's like, I'm just doing the things I normally do. It's not to be off-putting to somebody else or to step on somebody else's toes. It's simply, this is who I am and this is how I want my family unit to operate, and these are the things I want to do for my children. And I personally am grateful that my bio children have a stepmom who wants to support and be there for them and fill that role in their home. And so I never looked at it any differently on the other side of the equation with my stepchildren. But I think, to your point, it's about having that conversation. It's about communicating, hey, how are we dividing things up so we're not stepping on each other in our own home? And how are we supporting our family and our children? And who's handling what pieces? And how do we work together so that this does work for everybody? And how are we recognizing and appreciating one another on all levels, between the children to the parents between each other? I mean, there's so many different dynamics and aspects to it.
Yeah, I think when you, as a stepmom anyways, when you, like you were saying, if you're a stepmom and a bio mom and you already have kids in the home and you're already doing all the things, and you just add another kid and you're cooking and bathing and doing all the things, but you do need to have those conversations, because you end up, if you're not careful, you can be resentful towards your partner and even to the child. Again, it's uncomfortable to talk about, but you can feel resentment towards them if you're not careful about your reasoning why you're doing the things that you're doing. Again, so communicating really is key in a happy step family.
Right. Let's talk about that resentment for a second. What are your thoughts? What are your recommendations to your clients that you see resentments being built? How do you advise them to recognize that, own it, and what do you advise them to do about it so that it doesn't continue to be a thing ongoing? Have you guys talked with clients about this? What does that look like?
Yeah, I
I
have.
have, yeah. For me, I always pull it back even further to what is it that you really need? Do you need the thank you? Do you need your spouse to say, hey, I'm happy to do parts of that, so it's not all on you? Again, going back to Amelia's, we have to have the conversations. But I always tell my stepmoms and my bio moms, I mean, it's just a mom thing, to be honest with you, that we do have resentment. I mean, there were times when I was resentful, of like, why am I the one that has to do all of the things? Like,
Oh, so you mean this is a mom thing,
this is
not
a
just a
mom thing.
stepmom
Yes,
thing?
very much so. And I think part of that is as you said, as moms, we just jump in and do it. So are we taking on too many things? Are we feeling overwhelmed? Is the resentment because we're not being appreciated, or is the resentment because I'm so overwhelmed and I have a to-do list and I'm on the very bottom of the to-do list every day? So we need to look at the feelings underneath that resentment and see what is the need in there. Peel it back a little bit more. And that usually helps when I work with my couples, especially. It really helps when she'll say things like, I just feel like there's so much. And then we're like, okay, now we can solve, that we can figure out, but we needed a thing to fix. So peeling it back helps.
I think
Yeah.
that ownership.
Sorry.
That's okay. I was just going to say, I think that ownership of, are we building resentment because of something somebody else is doing, or are we putting too much on ourselves and putting ourselves last? That's a choice we make as moms and stepmoms, as human beings, forget the titles.
Yeah.
And we have to change that within ourselves first. Go ahead, Amelia.
Yeah, I was just going to say, to add to what Amy was saying, really questioning your driving force behind the things that you're doing for your family. Like, why are you doing all of the cooking? Is it because you love to cook, or is it because, you're just expected to? Why are you doing, X, Y, and Z? And I've actually given this example to a few of my clients who've been going through feelings of resentment. And I tell them the story of, in my earlier days, I would always ensure that my stepdaughter's laundry was done, folded nicely. She always took a bag back and forth, and always nicely placed in her bag, packed up beautifully. And no one ever acknowledged that I did those things. And I would, make sure that no matter what we were doing, the laundry was done for her to send back. And it got to a point where I used to resent that, because why was nobody thanking me? My husband didn't thank me. Bio mom didn't thank me. Of course, my stepdaughter didn't thank me. She doesn't care about who does her laundry. And I built resentment. And it wasn't until I really stepped back and said, why am I resentful? Why am I doing this laundry? Why is it such an obsession of mine? Well, it was because I was looking for, a thank you from people that I shouldn't have been, right? And so I needed to really look at myself and reevaluate the why behind what I was doing, and that fixed the problem.
Yeah, that's incredible. It's so important to look at the why. So when there's different aspects to this. There's the relationship with our partner and having the communication with them. And then there's the element with the stepkids, and going back to some of the modeling that we were talking about within families in the last couple episodes. And how much of that do we put on our stepkids, and how much they appreciate or don't appreciate, versus how much do we put on our partner to not only model, but to have those conversations about, hey, did you realize that, so-and-so is doing this, this, and this for you? Did you realize that we're going out of our way to make sure you have this, this, and this? And it's because we love you, because we want you to have these things, or we want it to be this way. But can we show some thanks and some appreciation? Where does that responsibility lie? How much is on the parents to model and have those conversations, and how much is on the stepkids and or the kids in the home, quite frankly, to show that appreciation?
I think you go back to having a conversation about values again, right? Like, does your partner value appreciation? Like, showing appreciation to others, is that right? Because if that's not a top value, that's not something that they're necessarily going to think about teaching their child. Yeah, so that goes back to like the basic foundation of the relationship. And I mean, honestly, not many people I know get into a relationship and sit down and say, let's talk about what are your top 10 values. But if we did learn to do that, and I think we could initially start off by solving a lot of our problems, because we could really get to know what is important to each other, rather than a year into it going, well, yeah, your kids never say thank you, or I never get acknowledgement, or right. And then you learn, oh, well, my partner doesn't really value showing appreciation. He values whatever. So I think that's an important conversation to have, is values.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Amy.
I was just going to pop in, and that goes to a lot of the work with the 5 love languages, and that's something I incorporate with my couples all the time. Is we need to know what our partner's love language is and what ours is. And you might be a person that words of affirmation help. That's how people thank you, and it makes sense. It might be acts of service. That might be the way someone else expresses their appreciation is, I'm going to do this for you because you've been doing all these other things. But if that's not your love language, you're not interpreting it that way. So there's that nuance with the 5 love languages, which is, I love it. I use it all the time with my clients, but it's so important because, as Amelia was saying, we all have different ways of expressing appreciation. And if we're not doing it in a way that the receiver receives it, the message gets lost in transition. So and it's super important, and I said this last week too, we have to model what we want our kids to do, and they're not going to just intrinsically know to do these things. We have to model them, and if we're not modeling them partner to partner, the kids aren't going to see it. So how else are they going to learn? We have to, it's such an important piece to all of this.
Yeah, I think it's really safe to say that no matter what challenge you're dealing with within a step family or a family unit, that it all has to start, the solution has to start with communication, with values, understanding one another's values, talking through those, and gratitude. You just simply cannot have enough gratitude. And those are all the things we can do that are within our control, within our home, within our family unit. So let's step outside of our home for a minute. Our stepchildren spend, let's just call it 50% of the time at another home with another bio parent. In this case, let's talk about bio mom, because that's where we typically see the most friction, is bio mom and stepmom. And so how do we navigate these same challenges of being underappreciated as the stepmom from the bio mom's point of view? And what can bio moms do to help change that dynamic so that the responsibility falls to both sides? Because I believe it truly does fall to both sides. It's like any relationship, both sides have to be willing to work at it. You have to meet in the middle of the road. You can't just put it all on the other person and play victim on your side. So what does that look like from your points of view?
Amelia, you want to jump in first?
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to make sure that you're dealing with a healthy bio mom on the other side. I mean, you can't expect a woman who, is unhealed from her separation or divorce or breakdown of her family. I don't think that you're going to see, a healthy relationship between the two, or her embracing any sort of, encouraging her child to have a relationship with you as the stepmom. So I think you first have to really, take a look at the bigger picture and who are you dealing with. And as a bio mom, you mentioned this before, Adrienne, just giving your kids permission. Like, I think that's the biggest thing is, letting them know that it's safe to have that relationship, and so that they don't feel like they're going to disappoint or upset their biological parent by enjoying their time or loving or caring about their step parent. That's huge, I think.
And I think giving that permission, even in the face of conflict, and even when you know that the other person isn't meeting you in the middle and isn't putting that same effort in, still giving the children that permission releases them from that stress and anxiety that doesn't need to exist for a child. And as hard as that is, just as a person, as hard as that is, it's so worth it to see that weight lifted off of children's shoulders that they shouldn't be carrying around. It's not on them. These were adult decisions made for adult reasons, and that should not ever be put on the child. And so whether you are a bio mom struggling or a stepmom struggling, just accepting the situation for what it is and knowing that you can only control and influence your piece of it and making the decisions to do right by the children, even in the face of conflict, I think are so important to eventually building any type of healthy relationships, even if that's just with your children. And there's never a relationship between bio mom and stepmom. At least you know you can do your part, but that takes you doing the work within yourself and healing those wounds and working to not build those resentments.
I think another piece of this too is, having an understanding of, and I don't want to say boundaries in a negative sense. I want to say boundaries in the positive sense of, okay, you're going to handle this piece. I'm going to handle this piece. Medical things should be both biological parents, but we have to understand that if our kid is sick and needs to get picked up from school, maybe stepmom's the only one that can swoop in there and pick up the child to take to the doctor or whatever. So we have to set boundaries so we're not stepping on each other's toes, but at the same point in time, somehow or another work as a team to say, okay, what's best for the kiddos, and be appreciative of that extra adult that's in the support circle for your kids. Because the old saying of it takes a village, it truly does, and I had that with, even with just my neighbors. We all had each other on the list for calls from school because we knew that we trusted each other to go ahead and pick our kids up and mom them until we could get to them. So, within a step family relationship, dealing with that, like, okay, I'll handle this, you handle that. You're not allowed to do this, but I'll do that. And, just laying those things out, almost like I almost sat down to write a checklist of all of the things that you need to talk about, and just have these conversations. And it's not about ego. It's not about who has what title. It's about how are we going to best serve these kids and get all of the egos out of the room. And let's just figure out how are we going to smoothly do this so that we do know that everybody's kind of on the same page. And then what a blessing, when you can have that conversation and say, okay, I know I have a backup just in case, because we all need that. We all need a backup at some point.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it does take a village, which takes us to talk about the bigger picture, even outside of just our family units or our step families and these blended families, is society. And I hear just as many mom friends talk about the pressure and the stress and the underappreciation as a mom. And then you take on the stepmom role and that doubles or triples or whatnot. And then there's this outside pressure that I think all of us have felt at some point or another of, the Disney story of the evil stepmom and how that has penetrated into how people view stepmoms and blended families in a general sense. And it has been overgeneralized. And there's really, I'd go as far as to say there's still a stigma that exists about being a stepmom, even to the point that many of us have been afraid to use the word stepmom. I know for many years, to have a more positive spin, I've referred to it as a bonus mom because that's the role I viewed we were in, as we're a bonus to these children's lives and being a part of that village raising them. But I think you pile on the underappreciation from your partner and then the stepkids and then the external houses, whether it's stepmom or stepdad, and then you take the general society viewpoint. And that's a lot of weight to carry and a lot to work through. Do you have any thoughts or tips or strategies around the stigma of the stepmom title?
Well, I think it is important to understand that, society has kind of shaped our view of step families and especially stepmoms. you hear the word stepmom and your brain automatically goes to homewrecker and, you know, something along those lines, or something negative happened with, you know, the ex-husband and the stepmom, and, you know, she's ruined the family. That's automatically kind of where your brain goes. And so I think it's important to understand, like, as a society, we need to be more educated about step families and you know, teaching about the positive, and it's not all about the horrible Disney you know, stepmothers, and there are good women out there trying to do their best. But you know, I have an example. Years ago, we were at a fall fair, and one of my stepdaughter's school friends, she happened to see her, and we were in a bigger city. I mean, there was tons of people, and she happened to see her friend, and so she was like, oh, I want to go say hi. So we walked over, and my husband introduced himself, and he said, you know, this is my wife or fiance or something. And the woman wouldn't even look at me, like wouldn't even make eye contact. And in that moment, I mean, it stung, you know, because she just didn't even want to acknowledge my existence, even though I'm such a huge part of my stepdaughter's life. Looking back on it now, I think, you know, she's one of those uneducated people that just has a negative view of stepmoms. And no, it's not okay to treat people like that, but I can almost see where it comes from. You know, because you watch the Disney movies and you watch, you know, just movies in general. Yeah, so I think, yeah, educating, getting these conversations out there so that, you know, just not just step families, but everyone needs to hear these conversations so that they can have a better understanding of, you know, the dynamics of what goes on behind the scenes.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a firm believer that we can't have enough education, and that goes across any topic that there's still a stigma tied to. But absolutely agree that it's important for even those that aren't in step families to at least have an understanding and an appreciation that it is a little bit different and there are different challenges that we navigate. But that doesn't mean that we're not still a family, and that doesn't mean that our children should be punished or made to feel different or put in those awkward situations.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, for those of you joining us today, thank you. We hope this conversation has been enlightening and provided value to you. We are here every Saturday for Stepfamily Saturday conversations. If you have topics or questions that you would like us to address or answer, please feel free to reach out to us. You can contact us through one of our social channels. We're on Facebook and Instagram at Stepfamily Guides, or you can reach out through our website at stepfamilyguides.com. We hope you have a beautiful day.